Welcome to Sports Night in Quarantine. I'm Delaney Barrow, and today I'm joined by fellow host Andy Hewling. Andy, how has it been kind of being secluded from everything at the camp you're working at?
Yeah, so obviously I'm at Pine Cove still. This is our final week for first half. I'm only working during the first half of the summer, so I'll be coming home to Auburn on Saturday. So it's been a wild ride. Obviously, this week has been tough because we've had some cases, I guess, in the past a couple of days. I can't really talk too much about it because it's still private information. But we've had to take a lot of precautions over the summer in general. And it's been different. It's been different for sure, but it's the only way to have camp. It's the only way to run without having to shut down like one of our other camps did. But it's been great. It's been totally a life-changing experience. But yeah, just thrilled that we could even have camp. But yeah, definitely been different.
That's awesome that you've still been able to go, and I'm sure it's looked really different this year. But I guess one positive note is that you're not missing too many sports headlines. There's not many events going on right now. They won't start until, I guess, in a couple weeks. So that's a positive note. But
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, like it's been I've missed a few like soccer games that I care about, but like honestly in American sports haven't missed too much because I think, everyone is still feeling the effects of the coronavirus and then like with all this George Floyd stuff going on, I think both of those things have really just have taken the center focus away from sports or entertainment or anything like that because people are just looking for the big headlines right now, and I think those two things really are just taking focus away from sports.
And you mentioned how the coronavirus is rising once again, and some people are referring to this as an early second wave, but a lot of people still think this is the first. I mean, just earlier today, the New York governor of New York said that the Mets and the Yankees are going to move their practice facilities from Florida to New York because Florida has experienced an increased number of cases in recent days. Like the NBA is scheduled to restart in late July. Do you think that because this is still the first wave, they're facing a potential risk of not even finishing their 2020 season?
I mean, I think first wave is a little too hard to say because honestly, like I feel like we've seen the first wave. I feel like this is kind of just like in between because I think we're gonna see it go up and down as we move into the fall because just with the way things are going with states opening up or maybe even having to shut down things, it's going to change numbers because I think we're seeing a lot of states that have reopened, like Alabama being one, and then more cases happen. And I think they're going to have to maybe put some more restrictions back on people because of what's been happening. But I think with the NBA and with sports, I think it's safe to say that they're probably coming back regardless. I think the organizations have a plan now. They've been studying, they've been talking to doctors and health professionals about what's been going on. But I just think that ultimately it's not really at this point going to affect sports or sports leagues because they know that as long as they do what they're told and they follow the procedures, then hopefully no one's going to get COVID. But if it happens, it's going to happen from the outside. It's kind of almost what's been happening here at camp is the how it's happened is that like the people who've gotten it, they weren't going out seeking for it. It came to them, and I think that's how these sports leagues are kind of gonna have it happen. Is it's not gonna come because they were acting wrong unless they just go off and do something stupid and not stay safe. It's gonna happen because somehow or another it just filters into players or coaches or whatever. So I think honestly the leagues are probably set to come back. It's just a matter of time of whether or not someone's going to get a case of COVID.
Yeah, and like you said, the numbers are going to rise and they're going to fall. But I honestly, personally, I think that as soon as the numbers started going down, I think that that's when a lot of leagues should have immediately made their return plans, because right now it's on the rise. And I don't think the NBA is going to be affected that much because they're going to be in a bubble. They're going to have special treatment, the provided all the amenities. Nobody outside is really going to come in, and if they are, they're going to have to take special precaution. But I mean, NHL, they're also supposed to start soon, and hockey is a very physical sport. I mean, obviously basketball is too, but they're so close. And football, NFL just released their plan, and recently Dr. Fauci said really the only way that the NFL can have a season is using a bubble plan, because they're just all over each other, tackling. And do you think that NFL, if they were able to use a bubble plan, like college football should attempt the same thing, or do you think that college football just might not happen this year?
I think that college football should attack after the same plan. Really, with the NFL, like you said, the hand contact, the amount of touching that happens, I just don't think you can make them go play flag football or something. That's just not worth it. Um, I think with college football, obviously, you've got so many teams. I could see them maybe still playing at their own stadiums. I know with the SEC that they've been really adamant about having fans, having people in the stadium, whether it's social distance or not. I think most likely we're going to see social distancing happening in college football if we have fans. But I will say that with the NFL, I think they're a bigger organization where I think they could all just go to different sites and play in division play, because I could see maybe, I don't know, like Atlanta hosting a bunch of teams just to play like division football, and then they, when the playoffs happen, they played a central location or something like that. I think it's just at this point of where we are at COVID, it's still not over. It's probably not going to be over for who knows how long, many months. I think we're going to deal with this. I don't know how long. It's too hard to tell. But I think sports are just going to have to do whatever is possible to keep going, because you have these players' livelihoods if they're professionals where they make money off these sports. And you have college football players who are looking to go pro, and if they can't do that, they're going to go find some other opportunity to try to go to a professional sport. So there's a lot of people's lives at stake, and I understand that, like, it's a pandemic. There's people dying constantly now. But with all due respect, I mean, it's still these people's livelihood. So I think, at this point, they're going to have to find whatever is feasible to play.
Yeah, you're right. There are going to be so many sacrifices this year. I mean, just there's probably not going to be fans. There's most likely going to be shortened seasons. I know Auburn University released that students are not going to return back to campus after Thanksgiving. We're going to go back at the same time, but we lose fall break. We lose 2 days of Thanksgiving break. And then our exams are supposedly going to be held online. So that's a sacrifice from the students, and I'm sure athletics is going to have to make plenty as well. And if Auburn is planning on having students on campus, what's to stop them from hanging out outside of the stadium if games happen? I mean, everybody wants to tailgate, and that's one of the traditions, and it's sacrifices are just going to have to be made, and a lot of people aren't going to be happy with it. But if you really want sports back, you're going to have to just accept it, that this is the new way to do things, and do your part, and hopefully it'll change before next season.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people are, I think with tailgating in general, really, I probably wouldn't be so against that. Just from the research that's been done, that being outside, especially in hot days, tends to be a good thing to kill COVID, because COVID lasts about 2 minutes at over 83 degrees or above. Now, obviously, football, it starts out as hot games, but by the end is cold. I wouldn't agree towards the winter time for those October to November games to be out tailgating by any means, because I think when the winter hits, we might see some more cases rise if we're still dealing with COVID. Hopefully we're not, but I think that's going to be definitely likely as the year rolls on. But I think tailgating, at least at the start of the year, I wouldn't be so against just because it's warm. Uh, but obviously, if the health officials are saying no, then of course not. But I think there could be a way to socially distance if you stay with your family. You could consider them like a cohort or something like that. If you stay with like a close contact group, I could see that happening. But like a mass gathering out, like to watch a football game or be outside a football game, I would definitely not be for, because that's too many people from different parts of the country or like your city or whatever.
Yeah, if they really wanted to make tailgating work, they probably could come up with some form of plan. But I mean, you mentioned that it doesn't spread as easily outside in the heat. But as a completely opposing argument, out in California, they're now requiring people to wear masks even outside, which is insane. And I think that that state and other states that have seen recent rises, I mean, they're trying to take the precautions, and it's obviously smart to take them now in order to hopefully have a downtime when it comes time for these sports to return. But do you think that everybody would have to wear masks at tailgates?
Uh, I just think it would have to be up to the schools, what the universities are saying, what the NCAA is saying. I mean, even for me, I have to wear this buff constantly wherever I am. If I'm outside, I don't have to put it on outside unless I'm just up in someone's face for some reason. Uh, but indoors, within 6 feet, it's on all the time. And here, obviously, I'm alone right now. But if I were to go outside this room and there are people outside, I have to put it on. But obviously, I just think it's up to whatever the officials are saying from schools or the NCAA.
That makes sense. And it will be up to a lot of schools because pretty much every university is kind of planning it out as they go, following their own path. Some schools have told students that they're going to come to campus early, but they're not going to return after Thanksgiving. Auburn, like I mentioned earlier, we don't go back early, but we will get out early. And surprisingly, we're only missing one class day with that, which is really great from student learning perspective. But it just so many different changes are going to come about because of this. And do you think that any of these transitions will have lasting effects on the way that college sports are played?
Well, I mean, I guess for Auburn specifically, since we're mostly talking about Auburn, I would say for Auburn specifically, I think the biggest thing is just like the transition of Thanksgiving. I think is a big deal because a lot of people are used to being off right before the Iron Bowl, and then you either come back to Auburn or you go up to Tuscaloosa if you're traveling up for that game. So that's going to be different. To have a week of classes, your last week of classes to be exact, before the Iron Bowl, and I think that will change some things as far as how I guess school will run. But I don't think it'll be too big. Obviously, fall break, that was kind of a little bit of a bummer, at least personally, because like I kind of like that little break, and you even would get a football game in, but you didn't really have to do a lot of school before that weekend. But yeah, it's just going to be different. I really, honestly, I don't think, like we said earlier, I just think there's a lot of sacrifices being made, some big, some small, and I really think if we have to go a week of school before Thanksgiving, like, so be it. It's honestly, there's just so much more being done, lives lost, and I think, if college kids are really adamant about having a Thanksgiving break, they need to kind of just stop and take a heart check and be like, okay, hey, like, this is worth it. It's worth, doing what they say so we can maybe get off earlier, and then also stay safe where we're not all around each other during the winter.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Iron Bowl, and that's been played the weekend after Thanksgiving for so long. And they would potentially have to move that if they end up shortening the season. Do you think that obviously I think that game would get precedence over any other games played. I mean, huge rivalry game, huge SEC standings competition. Do you think that might affect the outcome of the game having to play it significantly earlier in the season?
Well, I think with the Georgia game, a lot of people have already been talking about that game being early now. Probably a tougher one for Georgia because they have to play Alabama before Auburn in the third week of the season. Auburn would be the sixth week of the season. Um, I think that's tough, especially for Georgia. But with the Iron Bowl for Auburn, if you had to move that up earlier, I think with LSU game before that, that's definitely going to be challenging. But I think really to me it matters if there's fans or not because I think fans just play such a vital part in sports games, especially the SEC, where you need a home crowd, you need the advantage, and I think teams are going to be even. I don't see there being a team that's significantly better than another just because of the lack of practice and the lack of time that these players have had. But I will say also that there's going to be teams like Alabama, Clemson that are really like strong, but like I don't think it's going to be like in years past where there's a definite advantage on the football field.
Yeah, overall, I think this season is going to be really interesting. I mean, LSU lost their quarterback, Joe Burrows, to the NFL. And like you said, I don't know if there's a clear front runner for the national champions this year. And I mean, Clemson still has Trevor Lawrence, but also recently 23 players and personnel from their football team tested positive for COVID. So that's a huge risk to the program. And if that were to happen mid-season, they'd probably just have to pull out completely. I mean, there's no way that you could put that many other people at risk. And if one team leaves the championship and playoffs, does the whole thing have to stop? Or do you think that it's fair that, I mean, the proper precautions weren't taken or by some random chance they had to step out? Do you think that's fair to just have everybody else continue to compete for a national championship?
It's hard to say right now, but I mean, obviously with Clemson getting a lot of this COVID test reported positive, I think that does create some worry, some concern that this could happen during the season. Uh, I just think, like I said earlier about the NBA, is like they have a plan in place, and I hope, obviously, like it doesn't happen. But hopefully, from the research they've done and what the precautions they're taking, hopefully that causes less cases. Hopefully, no cases at all. But I think if that were to happen, I see. I really don't think the NCAA. I guess I guess the NCAA wouldn't feel uh, like they would have to shut down, but I think a lot of people would call for them to shut down because of what happened to like a Clemson like that, or maybe another team. I feel like a lot of people would be calling for them to stop because of what happened. And who knows who, like maybe these cases started the weekend before they were playing another team, and then that team would have to quarantine, and then the team that they played 2 weeks ago maybe has to quarantine. So it could create a spiral of things where we're kind of like, oh man, these two teams are going to have to quarantine because they've been around all these players. So I think the NCAA would be in a position where they have to say, no, we have to shut down, because I just don't think it's fair to the team that has the COVID cases. But also at the same time, I think it's ethically wrong to just punish a team because they got a bunch of COVID cases that they weren't looking for.
Right, and tracing would be a huge factor in these games, because if one player gets it, like you mentioned, there's a chance the team they played 2 weeks prior, somebody else could have it on their team and not even know it yet. But I mean, even if like Clemson were to have another breakout mid-season, not only would that be horrible for the team, but that just serves as an example that no matter how many precautions you're taking, there's still that small risk that could expand and just completely affect much more than you would initially think. And I know that having to stop college football mid-season, that's tough. I mean, I almost don't know if that's worse or not having any college football at all is worse, because I think a few games would be good to get in, but to be let on like that and then have everything just stop midway through, that'd be really tough too. Do you agree with that, or would you rather play a few games instead of none?
I'm a proponent, honestly, for less games. I've been a proponent for less games in general, but now I think that this should bring up a conversation that they play less games across the board now. Like, no offense to the little schools around there. I know that they make a lot of money off playing bigger teams, but my thing is that I think that the little games, yes, they prepare you, but like as a big school, uh, I would rather play more SEC games or even just your regular slated schedule of SEC games than those little teams. I'm just going to be honest. I think more people want to see that matchup than Auburn versus like Alcorn State or something like that. Like, I understand that like it's a big thing for those little schools, and I respect that. But like, I just think that like with COVID going on right now, there's too many risks involved with playing so many games that if you shorten it down to one conference, playing all the same people in their conference, you can maybe trace back things if there's COVID cases, but also you can kind of confine everyone into their own conference where they're not playing people from like halfway across the country who have to travel and get to the school that they have to play at, where you're playing in more of a regional scope of things with the SEC. And it's not as hard to get people on a bus or a plane or, just a private jet that's probably been, cleaned out, sanitized, whatever, and get them to wherever they need to go. That's only a couple hours away. So I think confining is what they need to do instead of playing all these games where people are going to have to travel long distances to get to.
Yeah, and you mentioned the D2 and D3 programs, and there's no telling how hard this is going to hit them this year, because we obviously know the traditional college football season is just non-existent this year. And if we happen to, like last year, Samford came to Auburn to play. Samford got paid really well to play them, and that they probably benefited immensely from that, their football program. And there's no telling the number of programs that might have to get cut after this year if they don't play that. I mean, already some sports at other schools, spring sports such as lacrosse and hockey, they've faced cuts because COVID just completely stopped their season and stopped their source of revenue. So there really is no end to the number of pieces and the different views that have to be analyzed in order to bring sports back. But, well, I mean, only time will tell.
Yeah.
But that's all that we have today. Thank you so much for joining me, Andy. I'm Delaney Barrow, and this was Sports Night in Quarantine.